you're here, so we know how the story comes out in a way, and when you went in. But what happened to get you into prison from your understanding?
Okay.
Like, tell us what are some of the things we should know about you to help us understand if, in fact, Fetterman is soft on crime.
Well, I grew up. It's one of the things that happened. I left boyhood and became a man in the true sense of the word. I educated myself because, as I said, initially we had no books, no radio, no TV. You might be in there for years and not know who the President of the United States was. We called this on this side of the wall because for 26 years I was at Graterford, which has a 40 to 50 foot wall all the way around it. And we couldn't even see outside of the wall. You'd go to the yard and you'd see everyone in the yard doing this, talking to each other, but they're looking up because it's the only place we could see. We couldn't see distance. So we'd look up at the clouds. Maybe we'd see a plane or a bird, a flock of birds. That was the only life that we could see in Graterford. When I went to Rockview, which is about 10 minutes away from here, I don't know if any of you folk know that there's a penitentiary right down the road, Benner Pike.
How many people know that Rockview is that? Okay.
A few. Mm-hmm. But I was there for 26 years. Strange that it worked out that way. But before I went there, we started on the path of what was called prison reform. Myself, some other young guys, some of the older guys, we wanted and demanded change. We knew it was wrong. We knew what was happening inside to us was wrong, unconscionable. We wanted, like you guys, we wanted to learn.
Can I ask you about in the realm that you're talking about with wanting change?
Yes, ma'am.
And you knew that this shouldn't be happening to us. Mm-hmm. I'm sure there's some people in here, so I want you to respond to this, who are thinking, why shouldn't you be punished? Why shouldn't people who go to prison be punished, especially if someone who goes for murder?
Okay.
Can you respond to that?
I will tell you one thing. When I left Pennsylvania, well, first and foremost, there was a time in my life when I marched around, I'm from Philadelphia, when I marched around City Hall in protest, me and 100 or 200 other young people and old marched around Philadelphia in protest at City Hall. And in protest of what? We were protesting the fact that the USSR, which was the Soviet bloc at that time, or Russia, and Red China had incarcerated over 1 million each of their citizens. To us, that was unconscionable. We said they have over 1 million of their citizens, and we didn't know any Chinese folk, or any Russian folk, but we knew that they were human beings. And to incarcerate that many people, something is wrong. And we marched around in protest. Well, today, the United States of America is the leading carceral entity on the planet. We have incarcerated over 2.3 million United States citizens. We have 4.6 under some form of parole, probation, or carceral supervision. We have over 11 million of our citizens or more with criminal records. The leading carceral entity in the world now is the United States of America.
So why shouldn't people be punished?
Because we are human beings. Because we are capable of change. Because we can grow. We can become mature. We can become more than who we were. And we all are more than the worst mistakes we've ever made in our lives. There's no such thing as an unredeemable soul. I mean, some guys, it may take longer for some people. I wish it hadn't taken 52 years for me because I was ready. I had changed 50 years ago. But I had a hard time convincing them of that.
But don't you think though that your change was connected to being punished?
No.
What was it
No, I
connected?
don't.
Okay. What was it connected to?
I don't look at punishment as being necessary. I think punishment produces punishment. I think harm produces harm. I think, one of the things that I became in later years was a canine handler, which is why I have Cora with me now. Some of you guys have been in the class and have seen or have been here on campus long enough to have seen my dog Fred and I. Fred was a 150, 60-pound St. Bernard that I used to walk the campus with. Everyone knew Fred. Everyone loved Fred. Fred and I would walk, and they'd see us from across the street and say, "Hey, Fred." They wouldn't say my name, but they'd say Fred. I'd just wave back and say, "Hey, how's everybody?" Fred was a rescue dog. Came from a horrible, horrible situation on a farm as a breeder. Kept him, you should have saw some of the photographs of the conditions that he was kept in. Well, Cora, that is laying at my feet, similarly is a rescue dog. Horrible conditions. I don't know the nature of the abuse, but she's been abused to the point where she is terrified of two-leggeds, terrified of us. Some of you that have seen Cora or have approached and saw how she responds, she's non-aggressive, but she'll shake and tremble and pull back, terrified of us. And so part of my job is not just to love them, which I do, but part of my job is to show and teach her that not all two-leggeds are beasts. That we're not all vicious dogs. And I've had Cora for maybe a month and a half to 2 months. And some of you have already seen that there's change in effect. She's changed, she's learning. When I first got her, for the first 3 days, she slept on the couch, I slept in the bed. I slept on the couch with her for 2 days. On the third day, I said, "I'm going to bed." And I went in and got in the bed. She stayed on the couch. The fourth day, I said the same thing. "I am going to bed," and walked into the bedroom, got undressed, laid down, and maybe 5-10 minutes later, I heard a pat of feet on my hardwood floor. Here she comes. And she got in the bed next to me, trembling, shaking. I just grabbed her, pulled her close to me, and we both went to sleep.
So you think?
Now she beats me into the bed. I have to move her over so I can get space. I said, "Come on, girl." Because she's learned that I will not hurt her. She's learned I am not a vicious beast. She has learned this.
But how does that apply to people who have gone astray? Many, and I have friends who will tell me this, Will being one of them, who would say, there was nothing anybody could have done to stop me from being drawn to the streets and the life that was in the street, and that's it. Like it wasn't. He came from a good family who loved him, and whatever, and yet he wound up with a life sentence for murder.
Situations happen. Mm-hmm. Some people go into situations like that with their eyes wide open. Some are drawn into it. Some are victimized themselves. Some are adjacent players. But the law is the law. And regardless of the role that you played, if you're caught up in the system, you're caught up. And you may wind up with a life sentence. But again, as I said, the reason why I don't promote the abolishment, why I don't promote the abolishment of prisons, because there's some people, I think, who still need prison, just to be separate and distinct from who we are as a society. But there are too many other people in prison who would be better served, or we would be better served, by having them home, having them with their families. Right now, I have a job. I pay taxes. Tuesday, I voted for the second time in my life. The first time was in November. I have a car. I have an apartment. I have friends. I have family who depend on me. I am talking to people in churches, masjids, schools. I'm talking to you guys. This morning, I was at Center County Correctional Facility, not as an inmate, but as a presenter. I went there with some other folk so we could argue our case before the Prison Board of Inspectors. I walked in, and when I walked out, I said, "Oh, wow, I am walking out." Wonderful experience. But the point I'm making is that there are so many other folk like myself who need to be home with their families, their loved ones, in their communities, in their neighborhoods, back in society, who have, like myself, been educated enough in prison, who have learned enough in prison, who have demonstrated enough in prison about who they are as human beings, and who recognize that